Hey guys, Evo here. So this is a video that I didn't really want to make, but it's something that I think is really important and something I really want to talk about. Class design is one of the most important aspects of World of Warcraft, and I feel as though BFA has missed the mark in terms of class design quite a bit. There are a few reasons I feel this way, so let's get right into it. Blizzard has been taking spells away from classes for quite a while now, but the Legion class reworks are where this is best seen. Every single spec in the game got simplified to only having 3 to 4 core rotational buttons to press. Frost Death Knights use Obliterate, Howling Blast, and Frost Strike. BM Hunters use Cobra Shot, Kill Command, and Dire Beast, and so on. Because of the massive baseline prunes to all of the classes, it has made the core rotations of almost every single spec in the game extremely easy to grasp and not very hard to master. There is an obvious switch here to making classes accessible and easier to understand, and no class demonstrates this better than the Death Knight. Before Legion, Death Knights used 3 different types of runes. You had Frost, Unholy, and Blood runes, and you could use abilities that consumed different types of runes. You could also convert runes into Death runes, which could be used as any rune type. This meant that the Death Knight was quite a hard class to get into because there was so much to manage, all those runes on top of managing runic power. Despite being hard to get into, it also made the Death Knight a lot of fun to play, harder to master, and easily one of the most satisfying classes to play in the game. In Legion, they scrapped that. You only have one rune type that is determined by your spec. If you're Unholy, you have only Unholy runes, and spells that consume only Unholy runes. And you lost all the spells that consumed any different type of rune. This change simplified the Death Knight, and most of the complexity of the Death Knight that I had loved disappeared. Despite the prune to every class in Legion, a lot of specs were still really fun to play. Sure, they were quite simple and not very challenging, but they were fast. You always had something to press, and that was enough to keep it interesting. At least for a little bit. But now, BFA is introducing a lot of downtime, which only makes the already existing problems in class design even more abhorrent. Downtime is not an idea that I'm opposed to. In fact, if handled correctly, I think it can add a lot to a spec. Let's look at an example, again with the Death Knight. So this is guy number 1. Focus. Guy number 1 has an ability to press, so he presses it. Now he needs to wait for that same ability to be usable again. But in the downtime, he needs to think about what he needs to do after that. Does he use his other ability that is almost off cooldown, or does he convert a rune into a death rune so that he can use another ability that just came off cooldown? He decides it would probably be best to create a death rune because using the ability that just came off cooldown would help him set up something else later in the rotation. Oh look, his spell is ready, and so he uses it. This is a good example of downtime because guy number 1 always had something to think about and he was never bored or disinterested. Okay, let's look at another example, this time with guy number 2, who is totally a different person because he has a hat. Just like last time, guy number 2 has an ability to use, and again, he uses it. Just like last time, he needs to wait for that ability to become available again. But he knows that he needs to keep pressing that button until something else procs, so all he can do is wait. And wait. Almost there. And now he can use it. This is an example of bad downtime because guy number 2 got bored waiting for his ability to come back, and because of that lost interest in the game. So what have we learned? Don't play WoW with a hat. Jokes aside, downtime in Battle for Azeroth is almost always the second example, where it's just boring and hurts the gameplay experience. This ultimately comes from a lack of complexity in the classes, which comes from the pruning. Almost all classes in BFA are nearly identical to their Legion counterparts, but just slowed down. This doesn't work at all because Legion classes were designed to work in the Legion expansion, not in Battle for Azeroth. They feel okay with a lot of haste, but when they're slowed down, all the flaws in class design just become far more apparent. To those of you who are saying BFA isn't out yet and they will change it, or it'll get better with gear, that is simply wrong. BFA class changes are done, according to Blizzard, and the increase in downtime is something they have stated is a core class design philosophy in BFA, and it's not just the side effect of low gear. The downtime is here to stay. So what can help make the specs feel more complex and interesting to play? Let's take a look at the talents. talents in BFA, in my opinion, have a pretty good structure to them. They try to avoid rigid cookie-cutter builds and do that by having rows that are dedicated to specific purposes, like an AoE row or a resource generation row. The problem with this is at the end of the day, these talents feel like they complete the baseline of the spec, not add to the pre-existing baseline. Once you have selected your talents, it feels like it's finally a complete spec that is ready to have talents added on top of it. But the issue is, there are no more talents. One example of this is the Unholy Death Knight. I know I keep going back to Death Knight, but it's my main, so there you go. One of the talents for the Unholy Death Knight is Epidemic, which is an AoE runic power spender. This just feels like something the class should have, and should maybe be changed by a talent, but it shouldn't be a talent in and of itself. There are so many examples of this in BFA, it is crazy. With talents, specs are still easy to play and barely feel complete, so there is only one thing left that could fix this. In Legion, we have legendaries, tier sets, and artifact weapons all stacking on top of the baseline spec. But in BFA, all of this is going away, and only one thing is replacing it: Azeroth armor. Azeroth armor was something I was really excited about, and I thought it would be really cool. It's not. We still haven't seen the effects of raid Azeroth gear, and they need to be really great to turn this system around. But from what we have seen, Azeroth armor is a massive letdown. Currently, Azeroth gear traits are broken up into 3 tiers. In the first tier, you have 4 different damaging effects, 1 for each spec, and 1 that works for any spec. Already, this is incredibly disappointing. There is no choice here. You will always pick the one for the spec you are playing. The second tier has defensive passives, which is a nice choice, but it adds nothing to your spec in terms of rotation. The third tier simply increases item level. That is it. There is nothing else to Azeroth armor. Unless Azeroth armor adds a whole spell, then I simply see no way that one passive is ever going to be able to make these specs interesting and fun to play. We will be able to equip 3 pieces of Azeroth gear, so we have a total of 3 passives in order to fix the classes, and that simply isn't going to happen. We have lost so much and gained so little. Most of the specs in BFA are completely reliant on Azeroth gear to make them interesting and engaging, and Azeroth does not look like it has the capability to do this. I am very worried about class design in BFA. And the sad thing is, I know that it's not going to change, at least not until release. It is so sad to me to see the dumbing down of this game. And this is honestly the biggest negative for me going into Battle for Azeroth. I hope that I'm wrong and that Azeroth gear magically fixes everything. But it won't. I want to end with this. Blizzard, I don't know who you think you were appealing to by taking out any modicum of complexity in class design. It makes hardcore players burn out and new players lose interest. Appealing to people that just want their class to be hit the shiny button isn't doing you any favors. It's only making people like me, who have been playing this game since the beginning, question whether or not they should even continue. Hey guys, Evo here. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, hit that thumbs up button, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. And just to quickly clarify, no, I'm not planning on quitting WoW. I have no intention of quitting WoW. Content is still coming, nothing is changing there. I'm just frustrated with the way they're taking class design in BFA. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought of the video in the comments down below. As always, any feedback is greatly appreciated, and I will see you guys next time.